Section 6.2, Factoring Trinomials whose leading coefficient is 1. This is my favorite thing to do in math, one of my favorite things. Remember FOIL, first, outside, inside, last? When we were multiplying two binomials, we multiplied by taking the product of the first two terms. X times x is x squared. We took the outside two terms, x times 3, 3x. We took the inside two terms, 1 times x, 1x. And then we multiplied the last two terms together. 1 times 3 is 3. FOIL. Notice that the outside and the inside are like terms. That happens a lot. And when you have like terms, you can simplify them by adding them together, and you get 4x. So x plus 1 times x plus 3 is x squared plus 4x plus 3. Suppose we started with our final product, and we were asked to figure out what went in the parentheses that you would have to multiply to get this x squared plus 4x plus 3. Could we do that? Yeah, we can do that. And it's a lot of fun. It's like a puzzle. So let's think about how that will work. We have x squared plus 6x plus 8. X squared will be the product of our first two terms. Those have to be x squared. Well, what can we put in the parentheses so that whatever this term is times this term, we get x squared. X times x. X times x is x squared. The next thing we want to do is figure out this last term. We know that when we multiply these last two terms together, we will get 8. We also know that this 6x is the outside plus the inside. So, what numbers could we put in these last two positions? We know that 8 is 1 times 8. 8 is also 2 times 4. Which pair of factors can we put in the blanks so that the outside plus the inside equals 6? If we put the 1 here and the 8 here, it would have to be, the signs would have to be the same because it's a positive 8, and because it's a plus 6x, the signs would both have to be positive. So that would give us on the inside 1x, on the outside 8x. That's 9x. That doesn't work. So the 1 and the 8 don't work. We can try 2 and 4. That gives us 2x on the inside. It gives us 4x on the outside. And 2x plus 4x is 6x. That does work. This is our answer. X plus 2 times x plus 4. Let's set up our parentheses. This is first, this is outside plus inside, and this is last. We want to first look at the first two terms. What times what will give us x squared? X times x. The second thing we do is we look at the last term. It's a positive 10. So these signs that go here must either be a minus times a minus. That would give us a positive. But what will give us a plus 7x? A plus and a plus. It has to be a plus and a plus. So factor 10, let's think of the different ways you can factor 10. 1 times 10, 2 times 5. Which one will give us 7x? 2 and 5. So we figure out the first term, we did that. We figure out ways to factor the second term, And then we check ourselves by making sure that the outside and the inside add together to give us 7x. The inside is 2x, the outside is 5x. That's 7x, so it checks. And that's our answer. X plus 2 times x plus 5. Let's do this one. First, outside plus inside. Ooh, last. This time it's negative 42. We're going to have to think about that. So first, x squared has to be x times x. Now this 42 is kind of tricky. It has to be a minus 42. What kinds of numbers? You have two numbers to multiply together to give you a minus 42. How are you going to multiply two numbers to get a minus 42? One is going to have to be positive and the other is going to have to be negative. A positive times a negative is negative. If they were both negative, you would get a positive last term. If they were both positive, you would get a positive last term. We don't want either one of those. So one has to be plus, one has to be negative. Now 42 can be factored in lots of ways. It could be 1 times 42. It could be 2 times 21. It could be 3 times 14. It could be 6 times 7. Now think about it. One of these is positive and one is negative. Which terms do we put in? One's going to be positive something x and one's going to be negative something x. Which two of these factors can we put in so that the outside plus the inside gives us a positive x? It can't be 1 and 42. Can't be 2 and 21. 3 and 14. It's got to be 6 and 7. Now if we put this 6 here and the 7 here, that gives us plus 6x minus 7x. That's not positive x. That's a negative x. We have the right number, negative 1x, but the sign is wrong. That means we have the right numbers, but our signs are wrong. So let's make this a negative and this a positive. That will give us negative 6x, positive 7x, positive x. That's our solution. X minus 6, x plus 7. That's it. 8 squared minus 3a plus 28. This one's interesting as well. The a's are easy. There's a positive 28 here. So these two signs are going to have to be the same. A negative times a negative is positive. A positive times a positive is positive. The signs have to be the same. What are they? They're both negative. It has to be a negative and a negative in order to get our outside plus our inside of negative 3a. So 28 is 1 times 28, 2 times 14, 4 times 7. Which one can I put in so that I get a squared minus 3a plus 28? I'm sort of tempted by this 4 and 7. Let's try it. If we have a 4 and we have a 7, but that gives us minus 4a minus 7a. That's minus 11a. That's not right. How are we going to get minus 3a? can't be done. Some of these problems are prime. Prime means they cannot be factored. We try. We think about all the factors and we try to factor it, but sometimes they can't be factored. That's ugly, isn't it, to have a problem that can't be factored? All right, always try to factor out the greatest common factor first. Now looking at this, boy, there's a lot of letters in here. Notice there's a b in each single term. That's a common factor. We need to factor the b out. What are we left with? What do we put in the parentheses so that when we multiply we get a squared b? We need a squared. And the middle term has to be ab. We need an a. And the last term has to be minus 132b. So we need minus 132. So we factor out that b, and then we set up our double set of parentheses to factor this last part, this trinomial. So a squared is a times a. There's a minus 132. That means one is a plus, one is a minus. How can 132 be factored? 132 is 11 times 12. We need to put an 11 and a 12 in. And remember, our middle term is going to be a. We look at this one because that's the one that's in our trinomial. So our middle term has to be a. So we need for this to be plus 12a minus 11a. Plus 12a minus 11a. That'll give us our middle term, and that's our final answer. We still need that b out front. The b times the a plus 12 times the a minus 11. That's our answer. Is there a common factor here? No. We always want to think about that, though, because if you can factor out that greatest common factor, it'll make the problem easier. So let's put our double set of parentheses. We want to factor b squared. It's b times b. We want to factor, we want to get a positive 35. That means the signs have to be the same. Are they both positive or negative? They have to both be negative for us to get minus 12b for our middle term. All right, let's factor 35. It's 1 times 35. It's also 5 times 7. Which one will give us an outside plus an inside of negative 12b? We need the 5 and the 7. That gives us negative 5b minus 7b, negative 12b. And that is our final answer. C squared minus 5c plus 4. Why don't you cut the film off for a minute and try to factor that on your own, and then we'll compare answers and see if they're the same. We need a C and a C, a minus and a minus, a 1 and a 4. That's our answer. Try this next problem. Turn it off, see if you can do it yourself. It's got a tricky thing to it. Can you handle that? We need an M and an M. The tricky thing is we need an N and an N. How do you factor 24? It's a minus 24. So one will be plus, one will be minus. 24 is 1 times 24. It's 2 times 12. It's 3 times 8, and it's 4 times 6. We need a plus 5. The only way we can get that is if we put an 8 here and a 3 here. That gives us plus 8mn minus 3mn 5mn. So that's our solution. All right, turn the video off. See if you can factor this one. Gonna try. Boy, I think this should work. But the only way I can factor 1 is 1 times 1. And that gives me 1x, but it gives me 1x on the outside. That's 2x. There's no other way I can factor this. It's got to be plus and plus. It's prime. We should try to factor it, but sometimes it just can't be done. It's prime. It cannot be factored. Here's another one with 2 different variables. So we have a d and a d. We also need a c and a c. It's minus 12, so one's got to be plus, one's got to be minus. 12 can be factored into 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4. Which one will give us a plus dc? We need that 3 and the 4. If we make it plus 4 minus 3, that gives us 4 dc minus 3 dc. That gives us plus dc. That's right. And that's our answer. That's all for this section.